Thank you. So we're on the bottom of the Chaf with base, and we're talking about back a little bit to the structure of the sukkah, not about the first mission was about how to be in the sukkah. And the first paragraph was all about the structure. Well, we're going back to the structure again today. I thought that subject might change, but I see the second paragraph is also about a lot of things about the structure. So the mission starts. So kari amita we had a couple of times that it means the bedpost. The four legs of the bed are called kari amita, but here Rashi says it means not that you have only the legs of the bed without the bed. You have the whole bed, and you leaned the sukkah on the legs of the bed. Rashi seems to say, I have the picture over here, but I can't put it on the screen. But imagine just you have a bed with a headboard and a footboard and the very tall, not a regular headboard that comes up 2 feet. Let's say it goes up 4 feet, and you put the schach from the headboard, bamboo sticks, let's say, from the headboard to the footboard. So nice sukkah, you have schach. Of course, you have to have a third wall also. You have to have a sideboard also that comes up. You have your headboard, your footboard, and have a sideboard. Nice sukkah. The whole thing is it's a bed that has schach on top of it.
But you have to sit down.
I'm not following.
Doesn't have to be like Rosh Haveruva, Shulchano.
You have a sukkah which is 7 by 7. You have a sukkah which is 7 by 7. It's very big. The schach is 10 tefachim higher than the bed. Everything's good. It sounds like it's good. So that's what the mission seems to say. Good. What's the problem? Nice sukkah. Some sukkahs of the karamiti, you lean the schach on top of the bed posts. We'll say that it means the foot. Okay, you can make also a frame. But this is a simple case that they say that the headboard and the footboard are very tall, and you lean the schach from one to the other. The Buddha says not always. If the schach cannot stand up without the bed, it's not kosher. We don't know why yet. What's the problem? If the schach is attached to the bed, like you need a bed. If the bed take away the bed, the schach goes away. So it's not good. We don't know why. Why is everybody told that it's possible? So the Gemara is going to say 2 possible reasons. My time of Maybe that's possible if the schach cannot stand without the bed. Between these two, how to explain of Yehuda. One said because it's not permanent. And Rashi says because the sukkah is so portable, you move the bed. And the whole sukkah moves along with it.
Well, we see you can try to make a sukkah on an elephant back.
So that's very nice. And Taisa says that it seems to be, according to Rashi's chart, that you wouldn't be able to. According to Yehuda, you also have to have a sukkah skeva, like the Gemara said before, and also that those who hold you need a sukkah skeva. We all don't have to. You're right. We can make a sukkah on a wagon, but those that hold that you cannot. They hold a sukkah skeva. You have to have a permanent sukkah, not a temporary dwelling. So then it wouldn't be good. And that's maybe what Yehuda holds. Yehuda Lishitazo, that he holds that a sukkah has to be more permanent. So if it's connected to a bed, so you can move the whole bed, and the sukkah goes along with it. It's too portable. It has to be more permanent.
So we're about the sukkahs they have on the back of the truck.
So according to Yehuda, wouldn't be good maybe, but we hold that it is good.
21.
One says a new reason altogether, new pshat, that the schach is being held up by something which is susceptible to tumah. Till now we had that the schach has to be made out of some material which is not makabel tumah, and now we're saying a new halacha. Besides that, also the things that holds up the schach also should not be something which is susceptible to tumah. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with the ma'amid? The ma'amid, this is the word ma'amid, ma'amidah, the thing which is supporting it. And that comes a new halacha that Yehuda holds that the thing which holds up the schach also should not be makabel tumah. Rashi says because since it's holding up the schach, it has a din of the schach also. Others say a little different, that it's xera, that if you're going to use a thing which is makabel tumah for the support, you use it for the schach itself already also. So therefore, not only the schach should be made out of something which is not makabel tumah, it shouldn't be held up either with something which is makabel tumah. Let's finish the Gemara, then we'll say what Allah is. My Benai, what will be enough community between these two pshatim and Rabbi Yehuda. So far, we're just going in Rabbi Yehuda. We didn't. The Tanakhama holds everything special of her. My Benai, what will be a difference between the two pshatim? That you took metal poles we know are makabel tumah, but you didn't put it on no part of a bed. You put it into the ground. You thrust them into the ground, so it's very keva. But the schach is being supported by a frame, which is what we have nowadays. All these prefabricated sukkahs. So you have metal beams, and that's what's holding up the schach. And according to one mandam, it's not good. The mandam the one says it has to be permanent, so it is permanent because it's not portable. It's thrust into the ground. But the mandam, if you're that it's not supposed to be up supported, it's not supposed to be held up by something which is makabel tumah. So here it's being held up by something which is makabel tumah. So we have two pshatim in Rabbi Yehuda, and there's an afkamina. I allow to support the sukkah with something which is susceptible to tumah if it's keva. But let's finish off to the bottom of the page. I want to say what Allah is. The Mishnah says samach. Samach means that it's leaning on the bed. But if it would not be leaning, it does have schach on top of the bed in a way that it's not connected to the bed at all, and you can move the bed away, then it is kosher. The truth is, the Mishnah already says that, because the Mishnah said, that Yehuda said, that means that Yehuda himself, who says that as a problem, is only if it can't stand by itself. If it could stand by itself, which is a Abaye's case, that it's not samach, it's not leaning on the bed, it's just, it's the schach is on the bed, but the schach is held up by a frame which is not connected to the bed, then it's kosher. And he explains like that's my time up because you have no problem. If the problem of the bed is because the whole thing moves, but if the schach is held up by a support which is not connected to the bed, so it's kavua, it's permanent. And
So that's like Rabbi Yehuda.
everything's going in Rabbi Yehuda. We're going in Rabbi Yehuda. The whole Gemara just talks about Rabbi Yehuda. Doesn't know what the Rabbanah. And the Gemara said, what's the reason of Rabbi Yehuda? We have two reasons. And Abba is saying, even according to Rabbi Yehuda, this also will be kosher because it has no problem. It's keva and a madam of b'nei shem makabel tumah. It's not being held up by the bed. It's being held up by the support that you made for the schach. So l'chora, I don't know, the Chiddush of Abba seems to be mamish the words of Rabbi Yehuda. So I don't know why he explained it, but that seems to be what the Gemara is saying. So we will learn the Gemara and we will say, very nice, this is Pshat Rabbi Yehuda. You don't pass like Rabbi Yehuda probably. So what's the problem? What's the issue? But if you ever heard, there is such an issue of Maimid. They do talk about Maimid that Lachatchila says it's better not to support the schach with something which is Mekabel Tumah. And therefore they say, if you buy prefabricated sukkah, things like that are metal, so they say don't put the schach straight onto the metal because then you're going to be doing this thing of putting the schach on thing which is Anshput and Shalmateches. So they say put a board across the metal and then put the schach on top of the board, on top of the wooden board. And they say that should be good enough. There are those that are machmir even on that. And of course, it's only the chatchila because we pass him that with the evidence good. But we holds that it's possible, we hold that it's kosher. But the apostle are machmir the chatchila to do like Rabbi Yehuda. So therefore, the chatchila.
We passing that metal would be good.
Yes, we pass him when it is good, but it's better to be machmir the chatchila, and therefore don't put the schach straight onto the metal. Put something on top, maybe between.
I see others do the same as you put slats on the metal.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. That's what we said. That's what they said. That we to put wood, to put the schach onto the wood. And there are those that are machmir on that also. They say the name of the Chazon Ish that it's called. They call it Maimed, the Maimed, that the mice is being supported. What's the difference if it's one direct or it's indirect? After everything's, it's still being held up by metal. So some are machmir not to do that. They would want to have only being held up by things that are not makabel tumah. So there's a machmir also. What are they?
So they take off the metal and then just put wood.
What do you take off the metal? They're not going to use the prefabricated sukkahs because they're going to say it's being held up by metal.
They're going to use the board.
Okay, so they'll try to make it something that's connected to the cement, things like that, and in a way that you don't have to have any makabel tumah. There's a question is how much to be machmir over there. Some even machmir not to use nails because after everything's over, it's going to be makabel tumah. But there are maybe everything is over here chumrah because first of all it's only Rabbi Yehuda and maybe don't pass like that. And also, even Rabbi Yehuda, the two pshatim in Rabbi Yehuda, if you hold it, it's maybe hold ein lakeva. Not everybody says this from Rabbi Yehuda either. So it seems to be a big chumrah. There are those that are machmir. The Pasha says that it's kosher in any case, and how much should be machmir. So they talk about this issue about Mamid. I don't know anything. There's interesting thing also over here. Taisa brings down the Yerushalmi that also learns into this, which we spoke about a little bit. Where do you count the 10 tefachim from? And he says the 10 tefachim of this from the ground or from the bed. The other case where you have the schach on top of the bed, you count the 10 tefachim, that the sukkah has to be 10 tefachim high. Do you count from the floor, even though there's a bed in between, or do you count from the bed? So they say it depends where it's connected to. If the schach is connected to the bed, like the case of the Reisha, that you have the bedpost, so then the 10 tefachim has to be from the bed. You have to have 10 tefachim from the bed till the schach. If it's connected to the floor, even though you stick a bed inside, that's not a problem because it's not connected to the bed. So this is a sugi also that comes out. Tosh learns that the Yerushalmi learns that in Rabbi Yehuda also. So you have all these shratim over here. One issue comes out of this Gemara is about Maimed. If there's the problem of having the support of the schach by thing which is Mekabel Tumah. And also the Yerushalmi learns in our Gemara, the issue might be about the 10 tefachim, how you measure the 10 tefachim. Next Mishnah on the Chav Beis. Sukkah Hamduvlalas. So that word, we don't know what it means yet. We have to wait to find out what the word Meduvlalas means. So a Sukkah Meduvlalas, which is so we had the concept of that you have to have more shade than sunlight, and then it's kosher. Rashi points out right away, the first Mishnah in the Masechta spoke about that is possible. If you have too much sunlight, it's possible. He says it's not repetitious because, on the contrary, this Mishnah seems to say the opposite. You have to have more shade than sun. Over there, it says that more sun than shade is possible, which you could talk about whatever if it's equal. So the Gemara is going to talk about that today. If you have equal shade and sunlight, is a kosher apostle. But this is the famous halacha that you have to have slasa bubim mechamasa, you have to have more shade than sun. And we still don't know how to read the Mishnah. We don't know what it's amdavlelos means. We'll come back to it. We'll come to it the right way in the Gemara. A new Mishnah. I'm moving command bias. If you made a lot of schach, you put thick schach until it's like a house already, is that kosher? Even though you can't see the stars are not seen. It's not so thin you can't see the stars. It's still kosher. It sounds like it's better that the stars should be able to be seen through, and that the post can say, even though it's kosher, but it's better. The chatchila should be a light kind of a schach that you should be able to see the stars. We'll see more in the Gemara, but it says that it's kosher even if you can't see the stars. Back to the first Mishnah about Medavlolos. My Medavlolos, what does that mean? No, we don't know what it is. My Medavlolos, Amr Rav Sukkaniya. And the Gemara is going to say soon, the word, a couple of lines down, it's going to say Midul Dal. It's going to say that it's Lashon of Dal. That means poor. It has very little schach. That's called the poor sukkah. Shmuel Lamar, Kana Allah Kana Yoreh, that means that the schach is not on the same level. You have alternating schach. You have a schach, let's say a board of schach on one level, and then you have the next one is going to be lower down, then up and down, up and down. You have alternating schach on two different levels. I hope it's not hard to imagine. It's,
like this.
Yeah, up and down, right. One up, one down, one up, one down. Kind of means a beam, not a beam, a reed, a bamboo. We'll see soon about how much it's separated from each other. But so far he says that you have two levels of schach. One is higher than the other. Not the case of sukkah gabi sukkah. That was two levels of kosher schach. Here you have that some is up, some is down, goes up and down the whole time. So it says that it's kosher also. In the Mishnah that it says, if you go back to the Mishnah, it said, sukkah d'v'dolas. The Gemara is going to say, is that one case or is it two cases? Is that the same case or one case? Rav says that it's one case. Rav will say that the Mishnah is one case. Those two points is one case. And Shmuel says that it's two different cases. And the Gemara explains. Rav Tani Chada, he learns the Mishnah as one case, which means poor schach. It's very thin schach. If it has, even though it's very little, but if it has a minimum that it's more shade than sun, it's good enough. So it didn't say two halacha, it said one halacha, that it's poorly roofed. How much? As long as you have even though a minimum, it's 51%. It's a minimum, a drop more shade than sun is good. But Shmuel says that there are two halachas over here that are unrelated, two separate shazes. Shmuel says two mishnahs, two halachas are being said in the Mishnah. First of all, the word means that it's mixed. What does mixed up mean? That it's two different levels, one up, one down. That's what the translation of the word is. And that's how Shmuel explained that it means that the schach goes up and down. The Tarti Katani, and there are two halachas being said. One is Sukkah Mevubelas Kshera. Even though it's on two different levels, it's kosher. The more will elaborate about that halacha. If you have the schach that goes one stick up, one stick down, we'll talk about that soon. And then the Mishnah says another halacha, which is unrelated, but the minimum amount of sale you have to have in the sukkah is to have more shade than sun. So that's the end of the sugya. I mean, so far, the focus of Rav and Shmuel how learn the Mishnah. Everybody agrees that the din is lasa mubu mechamasa. It means Shmuel, Rav's din is included in Shmuel. Shmuel also says, the Mishnah says that. It says lasa mubu mechamasa. You have to have more shade than sun. But Shmuel says there's another din in the Mishnah that if you're allowed to have the schach should be on two different levels. A bamboo stick high, and then a bamboo stick low, high, low, high, low. And the whole sukkah is made like that. It could be a pretty sunny sukkah because the sun is coming in between all the cracks. But Lamaisa, if it will be noontime, then it will give shade. And if it will be on the same level, it will give shade. That's good enough. How much shade? Like any sukkah. Sukkah has to be tzibas and bubu mechamasa. If everything's good so far, we go further. The rest of the Gemara is
far between.
Right, not very good. Now the Gemara talks about is there any maximum of how much could be between the two levels of schach. Amar Abaye. Lo shanu ella she'ein bein zel zeh shlosha tefachim. It's only kosher if it's less than 3 tefachim to the two levels. Good. But if there's a space of 3 tefachim, then it's no good because there's no connection between the two levels, and each one is not enough schach. So you have no kosher schach. The Rabbi says it's possible to be sometimes kosher even if it's 3 tefachim in between. Amar Rabba, lo afilu yesh bein zel zeh shlosha tefachim nami lo amon ela she'ein bein magag utefach. If you have in each one of these schachs a tefach of schach on one level, and then a tefach of schach on the other level, a tefach high, a tefach low, a tefach high, a tefach low, then it's kosher even if there's 2 tefachim in between the two levels. Because there's a new concept that's called chavot rami. Chavot means to lower, Rashi always says. Rami is to throw, means it's considered halachically thrown down. That you lower it, you make the high level to be looked upon as if it's low. And halachically, halach l'Moshe Messinai, the same way we say Lavud, we say Dofen Akuma, we say Gorachis, Gorasik, whatever. So here also you're going to say Chavot Rami, that you look at it as if it's lower down, and you have the top level of schach that has the spaces in between the lower level of schach,
Even more than.
even more than 3 tvachim, even more. It doesn't say maximum. It can be many yamas. Of course, you can't have more than 20 yamas because then never is a schach.
Yeah,
But you're allowed to have that the bottom one will be very low, top one will be very high, and you'll say Chavot Rami even though it's more than 3 tvachim.
That's all good when the sun's directly over them, right? It's on the side. It's
No, we don't care that you're right. That it's going to be sunny, but we don't care that the Maisa sun comes in. Like we saw that you're allowed to have that the walls. There's a lot of sun coming in. It can be very sunny. You're allowed to have transparent walls. You're allowed to have two walls and a tefach. There's a lot of sun coming in. And here we're saying also you also can have that the walls don't reach the schach. Also, you can have the walls 10 tefachim high and the schach can be 19 amos high. Plenty of sun. But all that is kosher. So we're not concerned the fact that physically it's sunny. If you want to make it shady, but it's a kosher sukkah. So that's what we have. That's either within 3 tefachim of each other, the 2 levels, or if the schach, if each of the schach has a width of a tefach, then it's good even if it's more than 3 tefachim. And now the Gemara is going to go on to prove all that. The Gemara says, Rabbi says, how do I know this? I'm a Rabbi. Top line, I'm a Rabbi. I mean, how do I know this? How do I know the chiyus tefach amina chavod rami? How do I know that if it has a tefach, then we'll use the Salach al-Moshe Messinai to consider it lower down and the same level on the same level? And if it's less than a tefach, then you're not eligible to do that Chavot Rami. So he brings a Mishnah about Tumah. We know Tumah, just a little preface. We know that Tumah is under an all of a tefach. What's an all of a tefach? A tefach wide by a tefach long. A tefach by a tefach has to be also a tefach height. Then you have an oil, and the tumah is brought under the whole oil. Also doesn't go through. If it's not an oil, then the tumah will break straight through, up and down. But if it's oil, then it stops it from going up, stops it from going down, and it spreads it under the whole oil. Here it talks about a case of Korza Bais Valiyah. Here's the case, Korza Bais Valiyah. So you can imagine a house at the middle of building with wooden rafters, and they made the 2 floors, the ceiling of the bottom floor, ceiling of the top floor, and you have rafters, no floor. The floor, the panels weren't laid down. You have no planks of wood, just the beams alone. I think they're called rafters. That's how you call them, rafters. So you have the rafters of the bottom floor and the rafters of the top floor. Shein aleim maziva. There's no tar and there's no planks of wood, just the plain rafters. They're aligned the top floor and the bottom floor. So imagine beams. We're going to say soon that each one is a tefach wide. 2 floors on top of each other, and the beams are exactly aligned one under the other.
What's this Chivot Rami?
Chavot means to lower, throw it down, and lower it, and throw it down, as if to say that's the halachic expression. It's a kind of good achas. Yes. Rashi says that. Rashi says what you said. Rashi said that's a kind of good achas, but he says that the good achas, that term applies more when you bring down a partition. But if you're bringing down, lowering a flat thing, then it's more applicable to use the lowering it. Good achas means to pull. Pulling means you're pulling down a mechitza. That when it says partition, you're pulling it down till the floor. Here, you're lowering a flat thing. You're saying that this thing is we're considering it lower. So Rashi does say,
Rebbe, if you think horizontal as opposed to vertical, then you understand what Chavut Rami is and why it has special requirements.
Okay, good. Where's Rashi over here? We'll see Rashi where it says that point of Chaim David. Where did it go? Here it is. No, not yet.
What I meant is that you're pulling a horizontal surface down rather than pulling a vertical surface down. It's not walls, it's a flat top.
I meant to say the same thing. Good. Here's Rashi. Rashi says, I know Indian good achis, but Chaim David is also called good achis. When you're talking about pulling down a vertical partition, then it's more applicable to say the word gurachis, pull it down. Or when it's horizontal, you want to consider it that it's closing up a space which is under it, then the word is more applicable to say chavota. So Rashi says, when you said that, it's called gurachis. Here's the word gurachis. Okay.
Also, I told my chavrusa, it's interesting that the word chabata is the same thing we do on Hoshana Rabbah, which is we take the arabas above our head and we force it down on the ground.
Okay, sometimes Rashi will say over there also that doesn't mean to bang, it means to lower.
Oh, so that's according to this.
Rashi says the word is to lower.
Yeah, I was just talking about the motion from up to down, bringing a surface down. Yeah.
Okay. So here we're talking about these beams. Again, these are the rafters that are without any planks, nothing, just the rafters alone. Like the shell of the house, you just have the rafters, and you have the two floors of the rafters that are aligned with each other. Tuma tachas achas mehen. What if you have tuma under one of these rafters? On the bottom floor. On the bottom floor, it's tuma on one of the rafters. So what would you say? That the tuma spreads out under that rafter only. Tachta tameh, only under it is tameh, but it's not going to go through because it's oil, and it's not going to go further, as we'll see soon. They can't go further because there's nothing to go further. There's a space in between. If you're talking about that beams, these rafters are aligned with each other, so there's no way that it can go off to the side. Why should it go off to the side? There's airspace over there. The sky is next to it, so there's no oil. So it spreads out under that beam. The next case is if the tumah is going to be between the two floors. It's on top of the bottom rafters. Imagine it on top of one of the bottom rafters. So where's the tumah going to go? Only under the rafter which is above it. It's going to spread out under that rafter. Between those two rafters is tameh because the oil which is above it only spreads out over there. How about if the tumah is on top of the top rafter? It's on top of the top rafter. So it goes up to the sky. It doesn't go down because there's oil under it, which is separating it from going down. All this case was talking about mechubanos. We had three cases, like 3A, B, and C. This case is mechubanos, that the case was that the two rafters are aligned with each other. And we had the three cases that we spoke about where either the tumah was under the bottom floor, between the two floors, or on top of the top floor. And everything is the same idea. That is oil tefach. Each beam is a tefach. It spreads under that. It doesn't go on top, doesn't go down. And if it's in the middle of the two floors, over there's tameh, on top of the top floor, then on top of the tameh, it doesn't go down. All that was good. That was all about mechubanos, when the two levels of the beams, the rafters, were aligned with each other. The next case is hayu elyonos kebein atachtonos, that they're not aligned. The opposite of being aligned. How would you call it? Maybe alternating. I'm not sure. But you can have that the top rafters are not aligned with the bottom rafters. On the contrary, they're aligned with the space between the bottom rafters. That's the words. If the top rafters were opposite between the bottom one, opposite the space which is between the bottom. So what is it going to say? Here's going to say that sometimes you look at it as if it's all on the same level. This is going to get into the subject of Chavot Rami. We look at it as if the top rafters are coming down to the same level as the bottom rafters, and we see one consecutive olah. If tumah is on any one of the bottom rafters, we say that under all of them is tameh, because the whole bottom floor is closed up. You could say not any place where the tumah is going to be in the bottom floor, the whole bottom floor is going to be tameh because we look at the top rafters as if they come down. Connect the al gabein. If the tumah is going to be on top of the rafters, any of these rafters which are alternating, connect the other tameh. Fine, then it goes up, doesn't go down. But what do we want from this point? That it said that if you had the rafters on two different levels, and they're alternating, they're not aligned with each other. So then the whole top floor of rafters is considered that it came down to fit in snugly in between the bottom rafters. So you see this concept of Chavot Rami. But the Brisa now is going to say only if it's a tefach. We didn't talk about that until now. That's what wants to bring down from this Brisa, that you only say Chavot Rami if there are spaces of if there are beams of a tefach. But if it be less than a tefach, then you wouldn't say Chavot Rami. That's what the Brisa says. Now, Tani Allah, we learned in this Brisa, only if these beams, these rafters are all of Pesach tefach, the size of a tefach, and also all of tefach, and also the space in between the rafters is a tefach. That means that the space in between the bottom rafters allows that the top rafters should be able to imagine them that they come in between. The space could be, if you would actually lower them, it has space to come in between. But if there's no space between the bottom rafters, which is a tefach, and Rashi points out, and therefore the top rafters are also not a tefach. If the top rafters are not a tefach, over there, if you have on the one of the bottom rafters, only under it is tameh, but in between it is not going to be tameh, and it's only on top now. What do you see? That you don't say that you're going to pull down the top rafters if they're not a tefach thick, wide. Only if they're a tefach wide and they have a space to go into, so then we would consider them lower down. But if they're not a tefach wide, we're not going to say Chavot Rami. Alma, from here you can see, the one is happy with this proof that you see from here that you only say Chavot Rami if it's a tefach. What we have so far, that Shmuel said in the Mishnah that if you have schach which is divided, alternating up and down, kana ala kana yored is kosher. Abai said it has to be within 3 tvachim. Rabbi says true, but if each of the schach is a tefach and there's a space in between, so the tefach, you say Chavot Rami and it still will be kosher, even if it's very
Rabbi,
two levels. Yes.
Yeah, one of the things we were trying to sort out last night was, is the reason that you need the tefach because Toras Ochel gives you a smicha in order to say that it's actually united, and even though there's differences, it's all one substance, and therefore it can be pulled down.
Or
No, I'm just saying, is it all connected to Toras Oel? That if you don't have Toras Oel, you don't have the halakha in place. You need, the prerequisite is Toras Oel to unite the flat surface in order to pull it down. That's what we were donning last night. We didn't know for sure.
yeah, it sounds like it. Good. Gemara is a kasha now. Top line, Yosef Avkana v'kam b'lo shmaita. Avkana was saying over the above Gemara. Rav Ashi had a kasha from a Gemara in Eruvin on this halacha we just said. If it's less than a tefach wide, you're not going to say chavod rami to pull it down. And now comes a long, many halachas coming up. The kasha doesn't come till about another 15 lines. We got a bonus over here. So, like any cruise, you could enjoy the. It's not relevant right now to what our subject is, but we'll learn halachas on the way. Eventually, we get to the kasha. But Tanya, we know about a korah. We had about an eruvin that you have a mobile, an alleyway that has 3 walls, but it opens up the 4th opening, opens up to Rishus Harabim, and it looks similar to Rishus Harabim. And people walking in and out, you might make a mistake. If people carrying the mobile, they might carry outside in Rishus Harabim also. So you have to make some kind of a heker or machitza by the opening and put a korah or a lechi. And a korah is a beam that goes from one side of the opening to the other side of the opening. And we had many times this halacha of the korah. We went home with Seches Eruvin, and here it talks about. We had this a couple of pages ago. This halacha korah yosim mikosel zeh and agas mikosel zeh. The beam was coming out of one side of the mavui, but it didn't make it to the other side. It was too short. However, you suspended it, you held it up, but it doesn't reach the other end. Or they come from the 2 sides, but they don't meet in the middle. Which we had the issue. This was brought down a couple of pages ago. If you say lavod be'emtza, this was the Gemara's proof that you do say lavod be'emtza, because here it says that's kosher as long as within 3 tefachim. So to see the words over here, if you had a beam coming out of one wall, didn't meet the other wall, or it's coming out of both walls, but it doesn't meet in the middle. This is the famous halacha of lavud. Something within 3 tefachim is considered filled in. So therefore, if the beam is less than 3 tefachim from the wall or from the other in the center from the other beam, so then it's considered closed up and it's kosher. If not. Regular din of lavud. Rav Shimon Gamliel, he always holds that lavud is 4 tefachim. We all lavud is 3 tefachim. Less than 3 tefachim. We all lavud is 4 tefachim. So he says the same thing, but he says 4 tefachim. Rav Shimon Gamliel Omer Pachos. What did I do? I missed something over there. I'm sorry. I'll take a second to get it back.
I can show examples of these if you'd like.
Yeah, please do while I'm getting okay.
Here's the 3 tefachim.
Very good. Here's in the middle. The middle, it doesn't meet less than 3 tefachim in the middle.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
Side.
Yeah, here's on the side.
Yeah, and that's in the middle. And we hold 3 tefachim as love, but even B'emsa, we hold love with B'emsa also. Very good. And Rav Shimon Gamliel will say 4 tefachim. Good. Okay. And now we continue. On the base. Okay. Gamliel said that the share is 4 tefachim. Bachas me'abba ein zach lavi korah cheres. Abba zach lavi korah cheres. Yel's love is less than 4 tefachim. So as long as the beam either to the side wall or to the center of the other beam, so then if it's less than 4 tefachim, it's good enough. If not, then you have to bring another beam. Okay. We have one halacha about lavud. We had to be 4 already. Another halacha. V'chein shtei korah samasimos. He didn't have one beam. The beam we're going to see. We said the beam has to be a tefach wide. The size of the beam has to be from wall to wall and within 3 tefachim, and it has to be a tefach wide. What if you don't have a beam which is tefach wide, but you have two thin beams? Shtei korah samasimos. Rashi says version of twins. 2 twin beams, each one is small, half a tefach, but together it's a tefach. So Tanna Kamma says if together it's a tefach, it's good enough. Lo b'zuk k'tei l'kabel aviach, lo b'zuk k'tei l'kabel aviach. The aviach is a brick. A brick means that the whole point of the korah is supposed to look like some beginning of a passageway, that you'd be able to make, to fill up bricks on the beam, and you don't have to put the bricks over there, but it has to be strong enough. It may be strong enough, big enough to be able to hold the beam if there'd be bricks. How big is a brick? So the bricks in those times were 3 tefachim by 1.5, by 3 by 3 by 3. The vein is a 3 by 3 brick, very big brick, 3 tefachim by 3 tefachim. And this brick is 3 by 1.5. That's called an amiyah. And here you see that usually a beam would be a tefach. This beam is a half a tefach, very small. Oh, they put two together. One is a dark brown, one is a light brown. If you look closely, you see that there are 2 half beams over there. Each one is a chatzi tefach. And the brick, which is a tefach and a half wide by 3 tefachim, so it would fit. How does a tefach and a half fit on a tefach? So the Gemara says that's wide enough because whenever you put bricks, you can put a little bit of cement on either side. You can protrude on either side a quarter of a tefach, etzba. That would be good enough. So that would be a kosher beam. If you have 2 twin beams, each one is only a chatzi tefach. If you put it together, it will be kosher, a tefach, so it's good, even though it's not one solid piece.
Excuse me, I don't understand what the brick is doing. How is the brick helping?
Right, the brick is not even there, but it has to be the beam. The reason why the beam is enough of a heker or a machitza is because if you want to, you could use the beam as the base of a layer of bricks that you would lie all across, and that would be the gateway, the shar, coming into the mobile. So
I see, but really all you need is a tefach, right? You have a tefach because you have the blonde and the brown. You have a tefach here.
And the chiddush is, even though it's not one solid piece, one solid beam, it's 2 beams, each one is half a tefach, is good enough. And Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel has, let's see. Again, why is it not working? I'm sorry that I'm having some tough. Okay, good.
Should I show the?
Thank you, Hashem. Okay. A little further person in the text a little because it's hard to go back and forth.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 beams. Each one was not wide enough to be able to receive the brick, which was a tefach and a half. You have to have the beam should be a tefach at least, and each one is smaller than a tefach. If together they will be able to hold the beam, which to be a tefach, that would be good enough. And if not, if it's not wide enough, even together it wouldn't be a tefach. So then it's not a good korah. But Shimon Gamliel is lenient, and not Lavud here wouldn't work. If Shimon Gamliel holds that Lavud is 4 tefachim, but Lavud is not enough to be over. It has to be able to actually hold up the brick. Not that you put a brick, but it has to be physically able to hold up a brick. But Shimon Gamliel Omer, a different leniency. Im Makabel is a riach la'orko, which is 3 tefachim, and selch lav yikor acheres, then lav selch lav yikor acheres. That the brick, which is 1.5 by 3, so he says that the 2 beams could be separated from each other, as long as you'd be able to lie the brick leaning on the 2 brick beams which are separated from each other, it also will be good enough. Lev Yaakov, I'd appreciate the picture.
Okay. And here you see that they put the beams sideways so that it's less than a half a tefach now. I mean, not the the beams are.
It doesn't make a difference if it's sideways or not. It means even if it's much less than a tefach altogether, even if it will be much less than a tefach, you got small thin beams, but they're strong enough to be able to hold up the brick if you would put the brick this way. That's also similar enough to a korah, and it's kosher. So even though together each one could even be maybe 1 inch instead of, and altogether it wouldn't be a tefach at all. But if they're strong enough that if you would separate them and put the brick, and even if they're separated not within a tefach, they're separated within 3 tefachim, that's good enough because you'll be able to put the brick lengthwise instead of widthwise. Okay, all this is a bonus extra credit, and it didn't get to our subject. Now we get to our subject looking something about Chavod Rami. So we didn't get there yet, and now we're here. Let's see. Here we are. Now we're going to Chavod Rami. How are you, Achas? Top line here. What if they were not on the same level? These two half beams that you want to combine them to be considered one beam, they're not on the same level. One is higher than the other one. Now we're getting closer to our subject. That you do chabod drumi, how you can consider one of them lowered to be the same level as the other one, halachically, imagining.
You said a while ago, what's the end?
We didn't talk about it yet.
Oh, we didn't?
One was higher than the other. You imagine them on the same level. The higher one you consider that's lower, lower you consider higher, whatever you need. Provided that the top one is not higher than 20 amas and the bottom one is not lower than 10 tefachim, because that's the regular halacha that the beam can't be higher than 20 amas and it can't be lower than 10 tefachim. What is the mashma? That you can have them separated very, very much, that the top one should be less than 20 amas and the top one and the bottom one are more than 10 tefachim, even though they're very far from each other. Now each one here is not a tefach. That's the whole problem. If it would have been a tefach, you wouldn't need the whole combination. One tefach, a coverage of tefach is good enough. So the case is that it's not a tefach wide, and we're saying chabod drumi, even though it's less than a tefach. So Rashi is asking Rav Kana, you told me, Rabbi just finished saying that you only say chabod drumi when it's a tefach, in order to move it more than 3 tefachim. And here you see they're saying chabod drumi, you're saying like 18, 17 amos, you're saying over here, because one is the 11 tefachim high, the other one is 19 and a half amos. And we say chabod drumi even though it's less than a tefach. This is a proof against Rav that you say chabod drumi even less than a tefach. Why? Don't you say chabod drumi as long as the top one is within 20 amos and the top one, bottom one is above 10 tefachim, you say chabod drumi even though there's not a tefach wide. The Gemara is going to say you guys are wrong. Amalei, Rav Kana told Rav Ashi, he explained the best of the following. Of course, the two beams have to be within each other, within 3 tefachim. Since it's less than a tefach wide, surely they have to be within 3 tefachim of each other, the top level and the bottom level. The Rashi just means to say that of the two, the top one should not be above 20 amos. Of course, the second one has to be within 3 tefachim. So in that case, two different cases. If it's very high up, make sure the top one is not higher than 20 amos. If they're very low down, both of them, very low down, make sure the bottom one is not within 10 tefachim. But of course, to each other, they have to be within of each other. He explained like this. The top one has to be within 20 yamas. And of course, the bottom one has to be, in that case, within 3 tefachim. Inami, if you have them both lower down, the bottom one should not be lower than 10 tefachim. Of course, the top one in that case has to be within 3 tefachim of the bottom one. The Gemara still keeps the Rav's Yisod that you don't say chabod drumi if it's less than a tefach wide. This brayso was misunderstood. It doesn't mean that one could be 11 tefachim high, the other one could be 19 and a half amos. No, for sure not. It has to be within 3 tefachim. It just means to say that the two, if they're both higher up, that make sure the high one is not higher than 20 amos. If they're both lower down, make sure that the lower one is not lower than 10 tefachim.
I mean, if it's even not lower than 3, but it's just 3 or just 3.5. You're not going to see a spot.
I'm not sure what you're saying. Let's just see the picture a second.
Low.
What is the picture
If
over
you're
there?
asking to make a condition that the lower one can be at least 3 off the ground. Yes, but you're not seeing the spot. Your head's not.
I'm not sure. You're talking about Korah, Mobi, you're talking about Sukkah. Which one are you talking about? Which subject? Right now we're talking about a Korah, and we're saying that the Mobi, the picture that's on the screen now, that there's a Korah and very tall, 20 yamas. So in the case where it's 20 yamas, make sure it's less than 20 yamas. And of course, the second beam has to be within 3 tefachim of that. If you're making it low down, then it's the bottom one is going to be within 10 tefachim. So the top one has to be within 3 tefachim of that. And make sure that the bottom one is not lower than 10 tefachim. So Yisod came out. We have the Yisodus now.
Sorry. So those two are adding up to be a tefach. One's half, two of them are half.
Yes.
They're different levels, and we have to have at least a tefach. So we put them together.
And that's only good. They're within 3 tefachim of each other. So
who
the
says that? Who says that? Rabbi Kahana.
Yes. And
That's the halacha?
so the Gemara came out now that with Abaya's explanation, everybody agrees with things. Abaye didn't talk about it. Rabbi spoke about it. That if you have the 2 levels of schach, like Shmuel said, sukkah of lolas, you have the 2 levels of schach. So if the 2 levels are within the 3 tefachim of each other's kosher, even if each one is less than a tefach wide. If you have the schach, each level of schach is each part of the schach, each board is a tefach, or each group of beams of bamboo. They're going to be a tefach. So then you'll say chabod drumi, and it'll be kosher, even if it's more than 3 tefachim. As long as the bottom one is not going to be, it has to be, of course, above 10 tefachim. Top one has to be within 20 amas, but they can be very far from each other as long as each one is a tefach. If they're not a tefach, then they have to be within 3 tefachim of each other.
Rebbe,
Yes, please.
I have a third picture. I don't know if it's shaykh or not. This is where it's within 3 tefachim height-wise and also width-wise. I don't know, is this,
That probably seems advanced.
okay.
I don't see that. What does it say on the caption on the bottom? What does the caption say over there? On the bottom.
It says
on the bottom of
Taritz
the picture,
V'Aminam.
it has some caption over there.
Can you see it? Taritz V'Aminam Hachi.
Yeah, he says, I'm Mishabur. Look at Mishabur over there. So this is already not in the Gemara. In case that he showed is not in the Gemara. Okay. Now, the next Gemara talks about how much shade do you have to have. So we said, according to Rav, that's all the Mishnahs. This whole Gemara about having 2 levels, but Shmuel's shot in the Mishnah, it's true. And he agrees to Rav also that the minimum amount of schach has to be tzelas and mechama. So the Mishnah says that regardless how you read the Mishnah says that the schach has to be more shade than sun. And the Marz Akasha from the first Mishnah in the Masechta that said that more sun than shade is possible. And it's a very small discrepancy. What if it's exactly the same? And that the Gemara does sometimes the deal that it says here you have to have more shade than sun. What if it's equal? Not that it's not good. You have to have more shade than sun. First Mishnah said that chamas and rubu mitzilas is not good. More sun than shade is not good. So you can deduce from that if it's equal, it is good. This is a famous way, quite standard deal that the Gemara says. It says in our Mishnah, it says shalas and rubu mechamas is kosher. If there's more shade than sun, is kosher. Okay, our Mishnah we could deduce that if they're equal, the shade and the sun are exactly equal. It will be not good. You have to have more shade. After more shade than sun. But Tanan, the Bidach Perk, in the first parak, it says the first Mishnah, if you have more sun than shade, then it's possible, and the diak over there would be if they're equal, then it will be kosher. What if it's exactly equal? Would it be kosher or possible? So just to point out, we had a sugya a few pages ago that spoke about you have schach kosher and schach possible, after Tezvav, that 15 of the Gemara spoke about also parts made. If you have the same equal, like you have a breach and a wall equal as a kosher or not, and the Gemara compared that to the schach also, and it said if you have equal schach kosher and schach possible, it's kosher. We pass in parts common as mutter. But the post here it tells us the kasha, but then we pass like Rashi that this sugya is different. The sugya of shade and sun is not the same sugya as parts common. Over there, if you have schach kosher and schach possible, it's very shady. There's also shady. But some of it is metal, some of it is wood, some of it is kosher, some of it is possible. Over there, parts common is mutter. As long as you have equal kosher and possible, you don't have to have drove kosher, it's enough to have equal. But also is talking about sun, that you have air spaces. So what if you have equal sun and equal shade? Is a kosher or possible? Our mission is mashma, that's not good. You have to have more shade than sun. The first mission of the Masechta is mashma, that equal will also be good, as long as you don't have more sun than shade. That's the most kasha. And the more answers lo kasha. Kan lo mala, kan lo mata. Rashi explains, that's how we paskin, that it depends if you're looking at the schach or you're looking at the floor. If you're looking at the floor and it's equal, it's kosher. You look at the floor to see the sun and the shade, it's equal, so it's kosher. If you look up to the schach and you see that it's equal, it's not kosher. Because Rashi says that when the sun comes through a hole, it spreads. Is that called refraction? Is that the term used? When the sun comes through a hole, that the sun rays spread out. So you can end up having more sun than shade. So you have to have equal by the schach. It's not going to be kosher because it's going to be more sun. If you have equal, if it's equal on the floor, if the sun and shade is equal on the floor, then it's kosher. And the Gemara says, "Papa, a zuz is a small coin, and this was a big coin. And if you have a hole in the roof, in the board, whatever roof, that is going to be the size of a zuz. On the bottom, it's going to be the size of Isra, which means another way of saying that the sun rays spread out. And we see that anytime we see a hole in the wall and any window, that the sun rays spread out more. I think it's called refraction. Maybe I'm wrong with the word, but that's the idea. So that's the part like Rashi, that the sun on the floor, it has to be equal to is equal, and then it's kosher.
You know when it gets more, Rebbe? When it's at an angle.
So
If it's straight above, then it doesn't get small.
I'm not sure that's true. I'm not sure you're right.
You know what I'm saying? You know when you're sitting out there in the afternoon sun and you see a beam and it goes all the way to the end of the living room that you're sitting in or the room that you're in? But if it's straight up, and it's all the way above your head. It only comes straight down. So
But yeah, it doesn't go to the side, but I don't know if it's gonna be, it's not gonna be bigger.
only the
When you have a laser beam, then it stays much the same as you started, I think, maybe. Even that I'm not sure. But if you have a beam of light, so it gets bigger. If you take a flashlight, and I think the flashlight also will show. Take a flashlight in the dark room, and the size of the light, of the ball of light, the circle of light is going to be bigger than the size of
You
your
know why?
flashlight.
Because the flashlight is right here, and when you're talking about the sun, it's 70,000 miles up above you, so it doesn't have that.
I'm not sure what you just said. Again, if you have a beam of light going through a hole or something, is it going to spread out or not? Is it going to be exactly the same size, or does the light spread out? Some say the light spreads out.
Only if it's right with the article.
The further away, it spreads out more and more.
No.
Take a flashlight,
If the,
same size, move away.
if the light's coming in from an angle, the shadow is longer than the beam.
I'm sorry?
If you have a light coming in from an angle, the
Yes,
shadow is longer than the what blocks it.
the shadow is also going to be bigger.
That I
The
said.
shadow,
That I
but
said.
we're talking
With
about
an
and the
angle.
light. But
If
even if it's direct,
12 o'clock in the afternoon, it's direct, and I'm saying it's mamash.
but we're not talking about the shadow. We're talking about the light. The light spreads. The light spreads. Take a flashlight. Take it to the wall. It'll be the same size as the flashlight. You take a step back. The ball of light on the wall is going to be bigger than the flashlight. Okay, we can try it.
Rebbe, the principle of the sugya though seems to be that because sukkah is l'tseil for the adam, therefore when it gives the halacha that it's at least equal, it has to be on the ground because that's where the adam is living. Correct?
Good. Yeah, it sounds good. Sounds good. And the last Gemara is about a thick schach. Now, people would like to have thick schach, that it should be very shady and that it should be good, and it shouldn't rain in also. So the Gemara is, let's say if it's shady, if it's very shady, very thick. So the Mishnah says that if it's thick, even though you don't see the stars are not seen from within, it's still kosher. So the Gemara says, even though the stars are not seen, it's still kosher. This is even thicker schach, and you don't see the koch vechama. What does koch vechama mean? Rashi says koch vechama means the sun rays. It doesn't mean the koch. It doesn't mean the. Rashi says koch vechama. Koch vechama means, bottom line here is ruach chama, the sun rays. So if it's so shady that you can't see the stars, then even Beishamai says it's okay. But if you can't, but if no sun rays come in, so Beishamai says that's also. The postscript says it's kosher, but it is better that it should not be so thick, that it should be more similar to a sukkah, not to a house. So even though it's kosher, but it's better that it should be, the sun should be able to come, some sun should come in, and they say you should be able to see some stars also. The Rambam says that Chachama doesn't mean sun rays, Chachama means the stars that are seen even in the daytime. That the small stars are seen only at night. The big stars, might say planets, something like that, that they're seen even in the daytime, that's called Koch Vechama. So that means that if you can't even see the big stars, the word Koch Vechama according to Rashi is like a chiddush. The Koch Vechama means sun rays. You don't usually call it like a karne chama. But he says that means big stars. Big stars. Stars that you see even in the daytime. So those, Beis Shammai says, if you don't see those stars, then it's pasul. Beis Hillel says that it's still kosher. Pasuk Beis Hillel is still kosher. There's one more sugya that folks can bring in. What if it's so thick that you can't, doesn't rain in? Which people would like to do that, to make a very thick schach, a kosher schach, that is made out of, that's not, it goes from the ground, and it's not a kabul tumah, and it's not attached, but it's so much of it that it's not going to rain in. So the Gemara doesn't say anything. The Gemara doesn't say a problem. But some Rishonim say that it's possible. Not only the Chafila, some say that it's possible even, not agreed upon, but some say it's possible. And Tosfos in the first page of the Masechta Dabeis, he says the fact that the Gemara says that it's a siman klala, it's a curse. If it rains on Sukkot, it must be that it rains into the sukkah. But you can make a sukkah that's waterproof, so why should a siman klala make a waterproof sukkah if you want to? It's not mamash harayah, but that's what the post can talk about, and they say that you should be very careful that it should be able to rain in. That doesn't mean that it casts the rain in as soon as it starts raining, but the rain should be able to come in. It shouldn't be a waterproof sukkah. And if it is, some hold that it's even possible. But the thing, as far as the stars go and the sun rays, then the chatchila, but the Yevet, it's surely kosher.
You got the Mishnah?
We got to the Mishnah. Yeah, we got to the Mishnah. So let's stop here now. Yashikach, everybody. Thank you.
Rebbe, which Tosfos is it on Daf Beis?
Right by the corner over there. There's a corner.
Ki Avidle?
first-
Ki Avidle Diras Kava?
Yes, and by the corner of this, Tainus, Kishamim, Simon Klala B'chag, the last narrow line.
Yeah, I
From
got
there
it.
from there till the end. They also bring down from the sugya of Rakbash and Ganbach over there. They talk about if it's a Sichcha Kelchasa, so some learn over there that it shouldn't be made so thick that it's like a house that doesn't rain in. So the post can bring in the Simon Rayos, they bring down this issue about the rain. But as to point out, it's not a Gemara.
What's the date today? It's,
Yashikov, thank you, everybody.
Shkoyach.
what's the date today?
Thank you.
We still want to meet Dr. Fine.
You-
How are we going to meet
Hopefully
Dr.
next
Fine?
week.
What?
Maybe next week. Maybe next
What a-
week.
What about those of us that aren't sitting in the chair?
No, that's the 20 minutes.
I invite you to visit.